Werner, you talked about sales being an art and a science, and certainly
Right.
in my experience, I've found forecasting to be exactly that.
Right.
Many senior executives in enterprise software companies struggle with forecasting. As it applies to solution selling, can you tell me how solution selling helped you with forecasting?
Absolutely. With solution selling, a lot of our ability to forecast was actually evidence-based. So you had to have very definable milestones before a client would move from an S, a suspect, to a D level, and all the way up the ladder to perhaps a C, a B, an A, or a W. So each of these stages had a rating associated with it. So for instance, a C prospect would be 50%.
Right.
And you would have to have a plan letter that was signed off by the executive sponsor and actually had been sent to the client.
Great. Well, for the benefit of our audience, why don't we just kind of walk through this? So a suspect
Sure.
is what? Someone you meet at a trade show who says, nice software, I may want to have a further look. Is that a suspect, or is that even a suspect?
No, it wouldn't be a suspect because, first of all, it would have to fit two criteria. One, it would have to be, the prospect would have to be in your defined market space. So they could be a travel agency interested in your software. So that would not be a suspect. And then the second thing that we would be looking for is whether they actually had a business issue and were aware of the fact that they had a business issue.
So you need to hear evidence, some evidence
That's
of
right.
a business pain.
That's right.
Okay.
Right.
And then moving on to the next one, a D, if you will.
Right.
That would be what? Well, first of all, backing up a bit, for a suspect, you'd put them down as a
10%.
10%. So
That's
if
right.
there was $1 million sale,
Right.
a potential $1 million sale, you'd put them down for $100,000 in your forecast. Is
That's
that
right.
fair?
That's right.
And moving on to the next kind of prospect, if you will, a D.
Right.
What qualifies a D? What differentiates a suspect from a D prospect?
Again, there would have to be a business issue, and you would have to have access to power. And we talked about that concept
Yes.
previously. So access to power and a business issue were the key attributes that you were looking for. And again, as part of evidence-based forecasting, this would all have to be documented through a letter back to the client. A letter or an email, of course.
Okay. The next rung up the ladder then would be a C at what, a 50% forecasting rate?
Exactly, Patrick. And that would be defined as a power sponsor with an action plan, agreed upon evaluation plan. And again, the evaluation plan would have milestones by which they could evaluate the fit of our software within the organization, and a commitment by a power sponsor in terms of dates by which these milestones would occur.
Great.
Just to interject, and again with the evaluation plan, there would always be a series of go or no-go steps by which you could actually qualify the prospect out, or the prospect could qualify you out.
Right. Now, one of the funnest things I remember about solution selling was actually the kind of a little test that you would do to the prospect. And if I remember correctly, one of the techniques was to actually put a wrong date in there or two. Did you ever do that?
Absolutely. And that was important for myself and our entire team to do. And part of what you're trying to evaluate is, are they just saying yes, yes, yes because they want to get your proposal in because they're looking for column fodder, or are they actually coming to you with a true and honest evaluation? And the best way to really judge that and to see whether they're paying attention is to see whether they would actually modify and change some of the dates in terms of the evaluation plan that you would have. And it's only when they would either add steps, take away steps, or modify dates that you knew that you really had a C-level prospect. So without them editing their information, all you're really doing is you're throwing a letter or an email back to the client. So they needed to own that document. And the way that we saw ownership was if they modified it.
Great. I always loved that test because Yes, I've seen many organizations get their resources get consumed by companies who say they're interested but may in fact not be.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Now moving to the next rung up the ladder, we have a B prospect. What differentiates that?
And a B-level prospect is where you become the preferred vendor, and this is the selected vendor by the selection team, and now what you're doing is going through the formalized process where you're going through legal reviews.
So they've seen your contract at this point?
Yes, they would have. Yeah.
Okay.
They would have seen the contract. That's something that you'd want to introduce very quickly. Large insurance companies can sometimes take months. So
they have a few lawyers on staff.
Exactly. So at that point in time, you really see yourself as being the preferred vendor, and that is something that they tell you as opposed to you extrapolating.
Okay, is there a letter involved here?
No,
no, but just face to face with a power sponsor, they would tell
right.
you are the preferred vendor.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
And then the next level up would be an A-level prospect, and that's really when you're going through the legal review and there's discussions going back and forth. You're the preferred vendor, and you're really dotting the I's, crossing the T's, and making sure that everything is win-win for both organizations, as much as can be with contracts, with agreements.
And certainly things can stall there for a bit as the lawyers go head-to-head, but if there's a will, if you've got a good case, in virtually 100% of cases I've seen, these things go through.
Absolutely. You work your way through it.
And so, of course, the last stage is the win, and that's when the champagne is brought out.
Literally, yes, exactly.
Now, I've heard many companies ask for, or many prospects ask for proposals.
Right.
What happens if somebody comes up and simply asks you for a proposal? How do you respond?
Well, first of all, we're not in the proposal writing business, and so it has to be very heavily qualified. And one of the techniques that we would use in terms of responding to a proposal, an RFP, was to initially not bid or indicate that we would not respond to an RFP, but we would if they would give us a couple of interviews with key executives. And the reason for that is if we were unaware of the fact that a proposal was on the street, chances are some other vendor has actually set all of the key criteria that the client is looking for. So unless you have an ability to go in, talk to some of the executives, find out the capabilities that they're looking for, the reasons for paying, and then perhaps re-engineer their vision towards what your company has, you're really wasting a lot of your own resources. And so we're not in the proposal writing business. You're in the software sales game. So a lot of times the response is actually no bid.
Wow. It certainly takes courage to do that, and I guess
a lot of fortitude. Yes.
A lot of fortitude.
Yes.
But it's obviously worked for you.
Yes, it has. Absolutely.
Great.